I'm Maddy Harland and I'm at the Oxford Real Farming Conference 2023 and I'm delighted to be with Kath Dalmeny.
I'm delighted to be with you too.
Who runs Sustain. So tell us a little bit about Sustain. What do you do?
Well, Sustain is an alliance of food and farming organisations who are interested in all of the things that this conference is about. So we're interested in sustainable farming that looks after people, the land, animals in a healthy and sustainable way that's not creating climate change, that is drawing carbon down from the air, that is looking after the animals that feed us, all those things. But also we're interested in how that food then reaches people, because it doesn't reach everybody, does it?
No.
Not everybody gets to eat well.
No.
You know, how do we make sure that not only can the production be supported well, paid for properly, fairly traded, but into people's homes so they get a chance to eat well. And unfortunately in our country, as we know, nearly a fifth of the population can't afford to eat.
Yes.
And the trouble is we push that problem back down the line to the farmers by saying make food ever cheaper, but then they can't afford to do the things like look after the animals and help the climate. So we're trying to create all together, working together, better ways of doing that system so that people eat well, land gets looked after, animals, the climate, nature, farmers get a decent income, and the whole thing works in a way that feeds us. Which sounds really straightforward, doesn't it? But of course there's all the complexity of that.
Yeah, and
Indeed.
how do we do that? Because that is the secret.
Yeah.
Because that's all about happiness, health, well-being, equity in society. I mean, this is a huge subject to boil down into policy.
Absolutely. How do we do it? It's such a good question, Maddy. What you do is you get together with all the people who've got the solutions.
Yeah.
That's what this conference is about. Here we are, Oxford Real Farming Conference 2023 is bringing together the people who hold the solutions. But nobody has an answer to all of it at once.
No.
It's all bits and pieces of stuff. So I run an alliance of organisations because there are people who are specialists in birds, in soil, in farming. We've got the Nature Friendly Farmers Network is a member of Sustain. So is the RSPB, who are the people who are interested in birds. So are some of the people who are interested in helping people to learn how to cook. So are people who work on education. We need to understand good food. We need to have it as part of our culture and our education. But we also need to be buying it well. Because some of us, when we've been learning about food at school, we then grow up to be people who buy the stuff on behalf of big companies, on behalf of caterers. Some of us might turn out to be chefs. Some of us might turn out to be teachers who need to be, bringing on the next generation of people who understand it. Some people, magical, wonderful people, go into farming to grow the stuff for us. We rely on them. Why aren't we paying them properly? It's like to understand all of this stuff, there are solutions in different parts of the chain. I kind of think good food is everybody's business. It's whoever creates the space in which we eat.
But it's the building block of life.
It's the building block of life, but then it doesn't make it into policy. So you just said, what policy should we have?
Yeah.
When I speak to policymakers, food is invisible.
Yes.
It's really weird,
Yeah.
even though it's so fundamental.
Yeah.
Energy policy, we're awash with it.
Yeah.
Great, good, we need that in a climate crisis,
Yeah.
don't we? A policy about education, we're awash with it. We just had the Prime Minister saying we should all learn maths till we're 18. Try telling my daughter that, but anyway, that's another matter. But in food, fundamental to all of our lives, and we don't properly learn about it as children. We don't properly think about it in policy. We don't think about consequences of farmers having prices pushed down by big supermarkets and traders, and we have to. It's not working, and it's fundamental to ourselves and our health. It's also fundamental to the climate. It's fundamental to the climate and whether nature survives on this planet, because most of the land in the world is used for agriculture, and a lot of that is used for livestock farming.
And we know that that's 50% of the climate crisis in terms of emissions, at least. But it's actually a high percentage of actually the solution to the climate.
It's a high percentage of the solution.
And that's the fundamental thing. And people underestimate how much carbon we can sequester, not through ridiculous carbon trading, but just by good farming, good land management, good food growing systems.
It's really nice because as you were saying that, we can hear that a session has just burst into applause. So they're applauding you, Maddy.
So how can we scale up? How can we become more powerful? How can this important voice that is all about climate not just mitigation, but sorry, not just adaptation, but mitigation. How can we change?
Well, I really take heart from the fact that this movement is growing. The movement of people who are interested in this. I talked a bit about food going invisible. I think we've taken it for granted on our plates that it's there. Not if you're on low income, obviously you can't take it for granted. But we've taken it for granted to the point where we haven't made purchasing by supermarkets, purchasing by catering companies, policies about farm subsidies. We haven't all put all of that effort, all of that money being used into supporting the right kind of farming and the right kind of food that ends up on our plate and making sure that everybody can afford it. We can do that. We can do that. It will take a lot of people waking up to this issue. On a personal level, we can do it by engaging in the right stuff, by buying food as much as possible from the farmers who are doing it well. These guys, you know, supporting the hell out of them. Where our jobs are part of that, where people are cooks or chefs or, you know, in the school cook or something, everybody can have some kind of role in changing that food to be supporting this kind of farming as well. We could be eating more plant-based. I'm not talking about vegans and vegetarians necessarily, but you know, some people are getting into that. But more plant-based food, because I think that's also part of a healthier environment. It can be cheaper. Obviously, you need the skills to prepare it.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I was thinking that, you know, when people live off takeaways and pre-prepared, mass-prepared industrial food, packaged food, it's actually quite an expensive way to eat. But somehow people need the resources to be able to cook and to know how to cook good meals.
Yes, I absolutely support that. I also think that we can do some things to improve those ready meals as well, because some people also like to eat that way. You know, we can't assume everybody will want the same lifestyle.
We can't have a sort of apartheid in natural food.
But I also often think quite a lot of our food is prepared for us when we eat out.
Yes,
and I don't mean necessarily in the posh restaurants. I mean, you know,
just
in a canteen, on the hoof, sandwiches, canteens at work. You know, a lot of people work in the public sector. There are canteens there in hospitals and schools. You know,
so that's really the first place to start, isn't it? Hospitals, schools.
I used to work in catering. It's a fantastic place to use up wobbly veg. You know, we talk about wonky veg and we all have to accept it. Well, actually, in catering, you don't even know. A carrot's a carrot in a stew. It's fine. You know, and when you get fantastic chefs going, I'm going to use better meat, I'm going to think of better dishes that are actually much more sustainable, a good balance of health, putting the better options on the menu, making them special, making them affordable, not upselling chocolate at the end of the... You know, I'm a sucker for this. If there's chocolate at the end of the aisle, you think, I'll just add it in. Take that away. It doesn't have to be there, and then I wouldn't be tempted. You know, it's like there are lots of things people can do to help on the health and sustainability journey. And when that happens in institutions, in universities, in colleges, in schools, in hospitals, in workplace canteens, lots of people go to work, there's a workplace canteen in their building. You know, there's something we can all do if we're helping the right kind of farming, we're not wasting the food, and we're making it healthier to support people's health. It can happen, it really can. At the same time, we need government policy, and that's the bit where I can't be quite so positive. I try and stay chipper, but it's hard because I think new governments come in all the time, quite a lot in the last year.
Quite a few.
And they don't necessarily get it. There's very few people who get this stuff.
No, that was, I went to a few of the agroecology Westminster meetings.
Oh, did you?
And what astounded me about them was the low level of education of our
people who make the decisions.
Our MPs. That there was such a lack of education about the most basic aspects of a more regenerative food system.
I find that deeply frustrating. I absolutely echo and witness what you've just said. And it's not necessarily a criticism, because they've come up through the same education system we have, in which it's not addressed. But also economics doesn't think about food. Economics treats food as if it's just any other commodity, rather than a commodity that is based in soil and water and land.
And this is what Satish is, you know, his core message is: we're moving out of the age of economics and into the age of ecology. I mean, this is the ideal. And
I used to work for Satish, because I used to work at Schumacher College, so it's really nice to be back on a stage with him. It's amazing. I mean, I feel like what's such a privilege. Because I was a whippersnapper, you know, like 20 when I worked for him. But he and Schumacher College utterly shaped my way of thinking about all this.
And have
Brilliant.
held that vision
Yeah.
for all that time.
Amazing.
Not too long though, of course.
Thank you, darling.
To who you are now. But that's the fundamental, isn't it? It's about this holistic, wider vision that integrates ecology and economy and policy and farming and the supply chain and public organisations.
And doing all of that with values.
Yes.
That's the economics we move to.
not just
E.F.
the
Schumacher was about
stuff.
putting people at the heart of that. And the stories that have been told at the Oxford Real Farming Conference, amazing. I was in a session with wonderful baker from Nottingham, Kim,
Yes.
and it was so wonderful what she's doing. It's bread with values, bread with connection, bread with community, bread that's got people first, bread that's connected to the soil because they're using, genetically diverse wheat in order to make bread. All of it's got meaning and value, which isn't just about, they need the money to pay for your premises and the heating and stuff, but that money's not what it's about. It's the connection and the good food and the people and community and all those things. When you do food well, it's so beautiful.
It's joyous,
so beautiful,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the real elements of joy in life.
Absolutely.
And it's all about sharing it.
And as you
and
say,
people.
the policy isn't necessarily where the joy sits, but
But it needs to be done.
it needs to be done, and of course the money needs to flow into the right places. So I don't want to appear that all of that can just be emergent and lovely and it will happen.
No, it has.
Because the
Well, I
farmers
know
need the
that
subsidies to help.
You're slogging away really at policy, although you're making light of it.
Yeah.
But I know that that's what you're doing behind the scenes,
And we-
trying to influence, encourage, educate.
And you face all the time people who don't get it
Mm.
and haven't heard of it
Yeah.
and don't know. And it's odd that we put these decisions in the hands of people who don't know about it. If economics does not contain good food system education at university level into the expectations of people's behaviours as policymakers, is something really fundamentally wrong. Because that's where decisions get made about where the money flows, the planning permissions, what buildings are available, what tax breaks there are for small businesses. And you need to get it to be able to make good decisions there. I'm really, really jealous and excited about the Good Food Nation bill in Scotland. Our friends from Nourish Scotland put so much effort into getting some framework legislation in Scotland that says it is your job, government, to have a food strategy. You have to have it. We're not going to tell you what's got to be in it, but you have to meet. And now they've got ministers from lots of different departments who all have fingers in the food system, having to meet and having to come up with things that will deliver for people food access, good food and farming that's climate friendly and nature friendly. These things have got now to be publicly done.
And once
and
you've got that
transparent.
model, we can transfer it. And that's what we need to do. We need to put
Well, Wales is copying.
Yes, well, Wales are
Fantastic.
always innovative
Bless
when
them.
it comes to that.
It's just Westminster.
It's just
It's just Westminster.
Wake up, Westminster.
Wake up, Westminster.
Okay, so that's really to wrap up our final message. Yes?
Yes.
Wake up, Westminster.
Wake up, Westminster.